there's this data that comes out that shows an estimate of the population of the United States. And this is used to basically be a type of audit for the census data that we just did in October 2020. This new report said that there was 332 million people living in the United States. So this is pretty significant right there, because although that sounds like a very large number, I remember years ago it was like 315. The problem is that is a 8% growth rate in the last 10 years. That is very low. When you look at historical averages and where we are now, we're not doing so well here. If the census confirms those numbers, it is the slowest growth since the 1930s, when it was 7.2% because of the Great Depression and restrictions on immigration. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, why are people not coming to the United States? Or is the American dream gone? Like, why are people not coming here? Why are the birth rates not higher? It's a lot of questions that this raises here. And it also shows a lot of the struggles, especially some of the younger people coming into the work environment today. And you see like the debt and there's so many things holding you back, and you're coming out of school into these 2008 recession and the pandemic recession and all of these things. So it's pretty crazy here. I mean, one of the goals of a civilization is that you want to see your population grow and be successful. So we have to look deeper into these numbers once the full census data comes out. Enough on that one. Next up, we have Bitcoin, which has just been on a tear all year here. So Bitcoin was just recently around $23,895, an all-time high. It beat the all-time high of around $20,000 this week. Now, the more important news for the stock market here, Coinbase, which is, I believe, the largest exchange for obtaining cryptocurrencies in the United States, and it can be done on an app on your phone or on a computer, they just filed for an IPO. This is going to be the first company that is an exchange for cryptocurrencies that is going to have an IPO here. So they did this like literally a day or two after Bitcoin broke the all-time high. So I thought that was pretty interesting right there. How could you find a better time to announce your IPO, right? Now, this company in 2018 was already worth around $8 billion. So, and it's pretty crazy. The companies that have IPOs now, they're always worth billions and billions of dollars, right? Why don't these companies have IPOs sooner? Although it's hard to meet all the regulatory requirements to have the IPO. They might do an initial coin offering instead. But yeah, so these companies are coming out when they're already worth a significant amount of money here. If you look at what helped raise the Bitcoin price so much, we had a number of different announcements here. Just in 2020, we had all these different payment platforms say that they're going to be utilizing cryptocurrency and allowing people to buy, sell, trade cryptocurrency. You had Robinhood, you had Square, you had PayPal and Webull. All those came out. Then you also have, there was a hedge fund, what was it, MicroStrategies. They raised like $650 million that they said that they were going to put into Bitcoin. Then another company, I believe this was an investment management company. They said that they were holding $744 million worth of Bitcoin right now. And I mean, I think that's right after that announcement that made Bitcoin hit the new high, because people are saying, oh man, there's these big companies, investment companies getting into this asset right here. So once again, we're just waiting to see what happens with it. How high can it go before the next crash? Remember, there's been 8 crashes in the past with Bitcoin. Let's see how far it can go before it hits the new ceiling and then crashes again. Probably doesn't make sense to get it here. You can just wait and it eventually will be cheaper. It's a very volatile asset. Guggenheim Partners, the chief information officer, came out and he said, oh, Bitcoin's going to $400,000 US. And so he gets all of these headlines, gets in all the mainstream news, and he gets a lot of publicity for his brand. But whenever you see, people did this with gold. They used to say gold's going to go to $5,000 when it was, $800 an ounce. And the thing is they do that just for headlines and to get their brand out there, to get clicks, basically. Ignore that for now. It's not anything realistic that you need to look at in the short term. Then we have antitrust lawsuits going against Google here. So this is crazy. There's just another one, it's another one. There's all these lawsuits going against these tech companies for antitrust practices, right? This one is led by Texas, along with 10 other states that are suing Google for running an illegal digital advertising monopoly and engaging with Facebook to set up a rigged ad auction deal. Very anti-competitive practices. They're going against them, therefore they're going against them there. So Facebook back in 2017 became a big rival for Google in online advertising. And the suit alleges that Facebook entered a deal with Google and it basically curtails their competitive behavior by, we'll give you some kickbacks on our ad auction system. So this is just like one of these many antitrust cases. What are some of the other, another one that's going on. List of antitrust. Justice Department against Google, October 2020. FTC against Facebook, December 9th. 46 states went against Facebook. That's a lot. Congress had investigation, including stating that Amazon was engaged in anti-competitive behavior against the third-party sellers on their platform. We're still waiting for that one to become an actual lawsuit now. So the big takeaway here, line here, if they have to pay out major fines, if they have to change the way they're doing business practices, and if they have to break up into smaller separate companies, that will be a huge change for these companies and kind of like change the whole dynamic of how things work right now. So another big takeaway is that the Section 230, that's the Communications Decency Act, if they have this removed, it gets rid of all of the protections for companies like Twitter and YouTube that basically allows them to, right now they can police the platform, they can remove whatever content they don't like, but by Section 230, nobody can sue them and say that, something bad happened because of content that was on their platform, or if they have misleading statements on the platform. If they get rid of that protection, which was for supposed to be public forums where you could say anything you want, and the tech companies are kind of acting like publishers now, where they're trying to censor different types of content that's being put on the platform, why do they still have that protection? So that is the huge change, because that will literally change everything about their legal liability if that goes through. More lawsuits, and another one. We have Facebook announcing that they are going to assist Epic Games in their lawsuit against Apple. So Facebook wants to get more into, remember, they're trying to become like an eBay where they're trying to sell different goods on their platform now, kind of like a Craigslist, where you can see items in your local area and purchase them and everything. They're angry about the new privacy changes that Apple enacted as well that go directly against what Facebook needs to survive. They need that information for marketers. That's how they make money. So they're also upset about the prices for paid apps on the platform, right? So there's a whole bunch of different things here, and they're joining in this Epic Games lawsuit that I spoke about in a number of other videos. Then we have some IPO news. So some of the IPOs that came out, we have shares of Wish, which were down 16%. Wish that went a little better. But the parent company of this is Context Logic, and they had their IPO at $24 a share, and they raised $1 billion. Now, this is different than the Airbnb and DoorDash IPOs, which skyrocketed when they had their IPO, right? It just went way up like crazy. It doubled. Well, this one ended up selling off. The shares opened at $22.75 and have now made their way back to $23.55, still below the $24 IPO price, right? So if you look at data going back to 1985, only 13 of 85 US IPOs that were valued at $10 billion or more declined on their first day of trading. And this means the investment bank that put them out there didn't do such a good job of assessing the market and where they thought the stock would be coming out to the public at. Then you had some other news here because you had Affirm and Roblox who have postponed their IPOs because they're postponed until 2020 at the earliest because of what happened with DoorDash and Airbnb. And this company was one of the first ones that had their recent IPO that really didn't do so well at the launch. So it's good to see that some companies are doing good and some are doing bad. It means that everything's just flying up for no reason. Because you had another company, Upstart Holdings, which they had their IPO at $20, okay? They raised $240 million, and the stock is now at $44.09. So they doubled their stock as well on their IPO here. And this company is very interesting. It's actually a cloud-based artificial intelligence lending platform in the United States. So they aggregate consumer demand for loans and connect it to their network of AI-enabled bank partners. So now you're having AI systems set up loans and doing all the work that was previously done. There's whole jobs and positions and career paths that are done by this, what apparently this AI can now do. So people are excited about that one. That's why it went up so much on the IPO. Next up, we have Solarwinds. Oh man, we had this big announcement from the government saying that Solarwinds, they had an update that they put out there, kind of like, the software updates and you just click yes to install the update. Well, this one was exploited by the Russians. And it's actually not just like anybody and not just random hackers. It's actually the Russian intelligence agency apparently had hackers that went into this Orion IT infrastructure management software between March and June 2020. So everybody that went and installed this update, it also installed kind of backdoors for this Russian intelligence agency to get into those networks. So this is scary because, this was involved with Los Alamos, where our nuclear weapons are, and in the Treasury Department, and a bunch of different, the Pentagon, all this kind of like major government institutions had this access granted to these Russian hackers here. So once again, the Homeland Security Department too, oh man, just everything. National Telecommunications and Information Administration. So everybody just got interrupted by this thing. And you even saw Microsoft come out and they looked at their system. And what it does is it kind of enables them to have access to see what's in the system and also install additional malware. So there's this big process where you have to literally disconnect the computer from the internet or the database and then wipe the hardware and then reformat it and then set it up good to go again. It's a big hassle for these companies. Microsoft found that it had that like that as well. And they had access for potentially 6 to 9 months in all of these databases. So this is like all these systems were being accessed for so long. Who knows what kind of information that was stolen here, right? And what's going to happen from this, right? Microsoft found malicious code. What if these other companies aren't going to find it? What if they need to now contract out some work to companies like Crowdstrike to find what viruses or what malware got onto their computers? What's infected? What got stolen? This could have huge implications here. And there's no recourse for, I didn't hear anything come out about what's going to happen to Russia. Are there going to be sanctions put on Russia because their national intelligence service is hacking the United States? No, they just get off scot-free. So it seems like, all the people that do bad and there's no repercussions for it. So why would they ever stop doing those things? Enough with that one. Next up, we have FedEx. FedEx, everybody thought FedEx was going to have an amazing quarter, a great quarter, right? Oh, I wanted to talk about SolarWinds. The stock went it went down to $14.18 a share from $24.34. I had to bring this up because that was down 41% on this news. So you see, you could be in SolarWinds stock, be thinking everything is going all well and dandy, and then news like this breaks and just completely annihilates you. And that's why you have to be diversified into more than just, one stock or one company or one sector or industry. Keep that in mind. Back to FedEx, right? So FedEx, they're doing a lot of packages, right? They came out with their earnings report. Everybody thought it was going to be great. Well, they thought earnings per share, they did well. They beat at $4.55 per share versus estimates of $4.01 a share. The EPS was $2.13 a share a year ago quarter. So that's pretty significant. But the problem was that additional stuff around the pandemic, but the profit margins decreased from 11.8 to 7.5%. So revenue was up 19%, but costs have been increasing. It doesn't matter that your revenue was up when you're not making profits. It's all about the profit. Everybody's delivering packages instead of going to stores. They had their shares, go down on this news. So it's pretty crazy seeing that. It was actually like down $16 a share, or about 5.75% after they announced this earnings quarter that actually beat estimates. So I spoke about the company CrowdStrike. They're getting a lot of business, especially from SolarWinds and everything going on with all the hacks around everything else. They just reached an all-time high of $205.91. Another company that's doing really well is Spotify. So Spotify has reached $1,158.97, another all-time high for that company. You saw also there's a lot of information coming out about them snapping up additional podcast things for millions of dollars. See all that in the news. I saw on the Tim Ferriss podcast, you even see some of the CEOs and big people from the company are doing podcasts as well. A lot of information coming out from there, and Shopify is just doing great in this kind of environment that we're in, where everybody had to go from retail to online. Next up, Lululemon. So Lululemon announced their earnings and it was up like 20 bucks this week on the news, right? They actually had a 22% increase in sales from 2019. So people are buying clothes for home workouts and are wearing more leisure wear because they're not going into the office. They don't need to buy office clothes, right? So I thought that was pretty significant there. And I love seeing these companies and how they're affected by the pandemic and how some are doing better, some are struggling, some are adapting. It's very interesting. Next up, we have Moderna. So Moderna's vaccine for COVID-19 has actually been approved by a 22-0 count by the FDA. 20-0 count by the FDA. So they're supposed to have like 6 million doses of this vaccine going into like next year here. Pretty significant on that. And if you look at some of the information, they're also trying to get into the European market with the vaccine. So they sent all the data to the European Medicines Agency to get approval in Europe, right? Well, it turns out they announced that some documents related to their submission for the vaccine candidate were hacked by some foreign entity. The documents did not identify any individual study participants. But still, you're seeing another cyber attack occurring here around the vaccines. And we know that I think it was China, North Korea, and Russia, and was it Iran too, where they were all doing hacks to try and find out information on the vaccines. And you see here how proprietary technologies are being kind of stolen, or, I mean, who knows what other data they can get out of this information here. But the good news is that we do have the Moderna vaccine, which seemed to have less side effects than the Pfizer and BioNTech one. Seems a little better. That one's coming onto the market now as well. So this is great news. 1 million people in the United States have already been dosed with a vaccine. We're going to be coming out of this pandemic, guys. We're looking at things getting better, and we're looking at a changing business environment. And to keep tuned to everything that's going on in the business environment, stay here on Spark Finance, and we'll keep doing the business breakdown for you. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.